Welcome to Research 101. By the end of this presentation, you should be able to have a bird's eye view on what research is all about. If you're new to research or you're curious to know the components to research, then this would be a good place to start. But before we get into any research aspect, let me introduce you to academia. Academia has been defined as being an environment or a community concerned with the pursuit of research, education, and scholarship, and a university houses and nurtures this environment. Within a university, and as academicians, we have 5 main responsibilities: research, teaching, community services such as clinical practice in the Faculty of Medicine, postgraduate supervision, and for those that may have more experience within academia, they may be involved in administration. This presentation will focus on the research aspect of academia. This flowchart summarizes the components of all the major responsibilities of academicians within a university. The ones highlighted in red will be the ones we're going to focus on in this presentation. There are 3 major aspects within research, which are grant acquisition, where proposal writing and acquiring funding to conduct the research happens. The second is research monitoring, where the actual research is conducted and regularly monitored to ensure that it is done on schedule and appropriately. The final aspect of research is the output generated from the research. Whatever data you have gets translated to meaningful information, and outputs can be in the form of presentations during conferences, publications, intellectual properties, or postgraduate training generated from the study. Graziano and Raulin have broken down the phases of research into 7 components which are listed here. The process starts with the generation of an idea. Experience or existing research can inspire new research ideas and processes. To explore the idea with the help of scientific research, it has to be clearly defined, and therefore, the problem to be addressed is described in the form of a research question. The research procedure that should lead to the solution of the research question is defined in the procedure design phase. The resulting research design determines the study participants, conditions, as well as the data collection and data analysis methods. After the observation has been carried out, the data is then analyzed and interpreted. The final communication phase is the delivery of results to the scientific community, and this in turn can trigger a new research process or stimulate the activity of other researchers. A research proposal is all about the pitch. The idea is to make your audience believe in the research that you believe in. It starts with identifying your research topic and then narrowing it down to a specific niche topic. From there, you start researching on what's known about the topic. This gives you an idea of what you no longer need to explore because others have already done it. From here, you would then identify research gaps, problems that needs further exploration because no one else has addressed them yet. When you've identified this problem, you would then generate a research question based on the problem at hand. This research question will now be your compass, where every component of your research proposal falls back on. This research question will now help you design the research, and now you're ready to work on your proposal. A research idea is only good if you've really done extensive research on the topic of your interest or expertise and identified the gap that needs to be filled. It also has to be relevant to the community you serve. In mapping out a research proposal, you would need to initially think about what you want to deliver in your introductory and literature background to the research. The general idea is to give the proposal reviewer an overall view of your research topic, highlighting what's known and what needs to be explored, in which case the proposal then highlights. Within the introduction and literature background, you want to include the relevance of the research questions and objectives, bearing in mind that your research objectives usually stem from your research questions. Your research objectives are usually measurable, and the research method tends to address the research objectives you define. With the research objectives in place, you can now prepare the research method. In preparing your methodology, you need to consider four main factors: the expertise you will need to carry out the research, the equipment or facility needed, the timeline of the project, which is elaborated in a Gantt chart, and an estimation of the budget required to conduct the research. Once you have mapped these out, you're ready to prepare your full proposal, assemble your team members, and identify the grant scheme suitable for the research. Above all else, during the conceptualization of any research proposal, you need to always ask yourself if the research can be realistically carried out and if the answers that will be generated from the research will be useful to the community you serve, be it local or globally. The research must answer relevant questions that are able to be applicable to the current and future situations. It's not just about generating knowledge to fill the gaps, but to also know that those filled gaps will be meaningful enough to create beneficial change. When writing the research proposal, the following components are usually what grant providers would like you to detail out: the research title, an executive summary or framework, the literature background, a problem statement, methodology, the research budget, the research outcomes, the equipment that is required to conduct the research, and the team members' expertise. You will also need to be aware if your research would require you to obtain either an animal ethics or human ethics approval prior to starting the research work. You can refer to your institution's animal or human ethics committee to assist with this. If ethics is required, then the details of acquiring ethical approval and informed consent of your subject for human studies should also be incorporated into the research proposal. An executive summary is like a synopsis of the research. A lot of times, this is where the grant providers will focus on first, to gauge some idea of what the entire proposal content will be about. This means that, within the few hundred words that they give you to summarize your research, this is where you have to be able to deliver your winning pitch. What summarized here is a suggestion of how one would approach writing an executive summary. This is in no way the sure-proof mapping of the summary, but it gives you an idea of the contents that are needed to ensure that the grant provider is well informed. Although the format may vary, the main contents of an executive summary would most likely include the following: an opening statement, which highlights your current problems, a brief background information, the purpose of the research, which are your objectives, the method of data gathering and analysis, your brief anticipated research outputs, and a description of what makes this research relevant. The next step after your proposal is ready would be to find a grant provider. Grant providers can be broken down into four main categories: the internal grants, which are provided by the tertiary institutions or universities; national grants that are provided by government bodies within the country, such as the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia; corporate grants provided by corporate bodies; and finally, the international grants. To know what grants are available, your university would regularly highlight grants that are open, or you can access them through the university's Research Management Center, which can assist with directing you to an appropriate grant provider. In UITM, this would be our RMC. Grant providers look for good, relevant research specific to the needs of the local and global community they serve. The funding is there to solve a current problem, and the more we're aware of those current problems, the better we are at directing our research. It's worth being reminded again that a good research usually considers its target audience, which is usually the community it aims to serve. The purpose of the research, particularly highlighting the relevance or novelty, and being able to describe the subject matter well, in terms of what has already been researched and what needs to be explored. And these questions will help decide if the research you plan on doing meets the general criteria of what's considered to be a good research. Once you have acquired funding to conduct the research, you're ready to put the research methodology to action. During this time, it's very important to keep track of the research progress by regularly reviewing your Gantt chart with the team. A Gantt chart is a visual view of task schedule over a period of time. And when preparing a Gantt chart, you want to be realistic with the timeline and give allowances for any delays that could occur during recruitment of the subjects or any technical issues of a research experiment. You will also need to keep track of the budget to ensure that the money is well spent and you're not left with insufficient funds to complete the project. If the project involves postgraduate training, then it is important to regularly touch base with your postgraduate students, not just to be updated on the progress of the research, but also to the progress of the postgraduate students' master's or PhD programs. This would have a separate Gantt chart for monitoring by the postgraduate supervisory team. Monitoring can be through various channels. Regular meetings with the team is a common channel to discuss the progress of research. They can either be the research meeting between the principal investigator and co-researchers, or the postgraduate supervisor meetings between the postgraduate students and his or her supervisors. Grant providers can also have schedule reporting, either through presentations or written reports, and they usually request for these updates every 6 months. The main objective of this is to see whether the research is keeping up with the Gantt chart and whether any output has been generated from the time of the grant awarded. The main objectives of monitoring is to ensure that the project runs smoothly, to identify any unforeseeable problems in the research that could delay the progress, and to identify any solutions to these problems. This slide summarizes the possible research outcomes. The research output includes, but is not limited to, the following: dissemination of knowledge generated from the research during conferences or working groups, through publications, intellectual properties such as copyrights or patents, and postgraduate trainings. The minimum number of outputs should match those that have been declared in your proposal and accepted by the grant provider. Any additional outputs generated will be a bonus to the research. So in a nutshell, research starts with an idea that translates to a research question, and it ends with the research answer. The research process itself can be rather complicated and long, but if the research question anchors the journey, the answer should be within reach.